Um, Hi everybody. My name is Phil DJ Right Click Valentine, but for the grace of God, I haven't had a drink or drug since December 28th, 1987. Coming up on the big 3-5 somehow. Don't know how that's possible. Uh 1 week ago today, I celebrated my 63rd birthday. 63. 63. Yeah, the potato of recovery, la papa de la recuperación.
El papá de la
Oh,
recuperación.
oh, I gotcha. Also, January of coming up will mark 24 years of being with the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery. We are here to talk a little bit about coaching for coaches, recovery coach performance support. Um, I start with a topic and we've been known to wander, haven't we, Nathan? We tend to sometimes just wander down the rabbit trail, and hopefully we don't go into the rabbit hole, just go down the trail a little ways. Um, so I want you to introduce yourself today. And I want you to think about something that you have become aware of recently. And whatever that may be, introduce yourself, something that you have become aware of recently. Did I tell you, because I'll go first, so I'll give you a little time to think about it. Did you guys hear the Buddy the dog story? Did I tell you that story?
We've heard many Buddy the dog stories, but I bet this one's different.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I told it here last time because I go to to all our centers, and I try to keep track as best I can. I have to have people like Michael said, no, Phil, you did that last time or whatever, so, but my Buddy the dog story. So I just spent 2 weeks on the Rhode Island beaches, 14 days in our new camper. I didn't grow tired of it. And every day I was on the beach, I think I caught a fish out of the beach. One day it was like 15-foot waves and 40-mile-an-hour winds and getting battered about and taking this 2-ounce like lead head and just humming it right into the face of a wave where I saw a fish breaking and so it was really kind of cool. And other days they were just blowing up at your feet and you could have just literally scooped them onto the beach. It all depends on the day, right? But I was with Buddy the dog the whole time. Buddy, my dog I've had for 7 years. And a couple months ago, and David, you were at this when I came to this revelation that I couldn't quite figure it out about my own self-awareness, was I got the dog after I finished the Appalachian Trail to keep me walking in the woods, which he does a great job of. So I was wondering why that like over the last year it had gotten worse, that every time I went to either get my socks or my shoes to go on a walk, my dog would get incredibly happy, right? He'd start bouncing around. We're going for a walk. We're going for a walk. We're going for a walk. And you know what my reaction was? I got angry. And I couldn't figure out why I was getting angry that the dog, that what I got him to do was doing what I wanted him to do. And I would get like, it got to the point where Sandy wasn't even like saying, Phil, why are you getting so angry? She's like going, Buddy, calm down. You know, he gets angry when you do this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so warped. And it went on for a few months until I was at doing this recovery coach performance support. You teach best what you most need to learn. And I realized that that wasn't what the real issue was. Why was I getting angry? And I learned and became aware of that it was fear, because for me, anger is the face of fear. And what was I afraid of? Well, I've had other dogs in my life and none of them ended well. I never held a dog at that moment where it was time for him to cross or her to cross the Rainbow Bridge, and he or she was in my arms. I've either had to give him up for various reasons. That one died tragically. And one of the reasons I got Buddy is I wanted to see a dog's life all the way through. So, and some people, they knew this instantly when I tell them the story. I was obviously afraid of loving the dog too much, so I was trying to push it away. And since I came to that realization, something I became aware of, me and the dog have gotten along great. I just I decided, yeah, I signed up for this. Yeah, it's gonna hurt when it's time to go, assuming I outlive the dog, which might be a big assumption, right?
I'll turn my volume off.
And so I decided I would just love the dog to the best of my ability, and it's gotten a lot better. So that was my story of self-awareness. It doesn't have your story does not have to be quite as involved or as complicated. It could be I became aware of, hey, I have a pine tree way back there that I never noticed before, or something like that. So who would like to introduce themselves? David.
Hey, everybody, Dave. It's great to be here on this. I didn't plan on it, but I'm really grateful to be here. And well, especially because Phil, the story that you just mentioned, I'm it's a great segue. That's why I raised my hand. I mean, I have to talk about my dog. And I loved what you said, Phil, about like you wanted to see a dog's life all the way through. I never had a dog in adulthood. I had childhood dogs, but so we got Tuna, my dog currently, when he was 3, and he was given 2 months to live 3 years ago, cancer. And but he's October 23rd will be his 14th birthday. If we get there, I think we will. But we're going through some rough times right now. He has a torn ACL, he has hip dysplasia, he's completely incontinent and all that stuff. So same thing, Phil, though I have a better reason to be angry than you. Tuna's not at the door going, let's go for a run. He's, sorry guys, but pooping and peeing everywhere, and it's kind of a nightmare, but his quality of life is still good, believe it or not. And but I found myself getting really angry when I'd come down and see the mess. And I mean, though it makes sense, I really wanted to try to drill down as to why I was so angry. And I think Phil also touched on it. It was like, I'm trying to, push him away, at some level. But I mean, before kind of getting sober, I wouldn't have even been able to recognize that, in active addiction. I just would have gotten pissed and gone, cleaned up and gone on a rant and not slow down and identify, what's happening. The other thing I just want to say is that, I'm very self-aware that for the most part, I'm managing this decline very well, and in a sober fashion. And unfortunately, my dad, who passed away a year ago from ALS, I was there, I was present, but I didn't, the relationship was like, I didn't deal with it in a completely sober way with my emotions, like I'm dealing with my dog. And, it's very similar, there's like these slow declines that, so I guess this is a long rambly way of saying that I'm just self-aware of myself and what's happening and in sad situations and dealing with them the best I can. So that's it for me.
Thanks, David. Who else? Khalees.
I'll go. My name is Khalees. I have become aware that whenever I am doing what I love, I produce more. I have more energy, and it just flows. Whereas if I'm not doing the work I love, I feel kind of fatigued, tired, not as engaged, etc. So that's really helped me have some awareness about what I like and what I don't like in my life and where I align. So
That's
nice.
cool. Thank you, Khalees. Yes, Mel.
Hi everyone, I'm Mel. Happy to be here today. So I've become aware that, well, I've been aware for a little while, but it seems fitting that if I don't manage and give myself enough self-care, that my behaviors, what we sometimes call defects or the things that I struggle with show up a lot more than they do normally. So I have become aware to notice when I start to be activated. And when I start to perhaps feel a bit stroppy or a bit stressed, and I check in with myself and I ask myself what I need. And if that is rest, then I give myself the rest. And in that way, my recovery is a little bit more on an even keel. So thanks.
Did you say stroppy?
I did.
You don't hear that over here too often. I love that term. I love it.
You know what it means, I guess. It's just like niggly, and yeah.
Niggly? What's niggly?
Okay. I don't think of the American word, but yeah. Narky, is that an American word? No? Okay.
Well, they're all appropriate. I
All right.
understood what you meant. Who'd like to go next? Thank you. Nathan.
Hey, I'm Nita. So I guess something I've become aware of, which has then caused me self-awareness really today, was the value of the relationship with my mother and how I don't value that enough sometimes. And that because today my mom put toast in the toaster 3 times because she forgot. And that just made my heart hurt a bit because it was the first time she'd acknowledged that she might be struggling with remembering things in the short term. And so it was just, although I'm grateful for the business I've got and the work I do, it just made me really self-aware how much I need to spend time with her because it doesn't last forever.
Amen, sister. Tiffany.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany. I have kind of a similar story to you, Phil, that happened to me this weekend. So I'm dating somebody, and he invited me over to his family's house for dinner. And of course, it was only supposed to be his dad and brother. And the next thing you know, the sister and brother-in-law show up, and the uncle and the nephew show up. And next thing you know, there's like 15 people at the table. And I'm like, oh my God. But his female cousin walks in, and there wasn't a seat at the table. And so it's knowing him, I knew his first thing was going to be to stand up and give her his chair. And of course, why wouldn't I want him to do that, right? So I turned to him, and instead of me saying like, yeah, give her your chair, I'm like, don't you dare move and leave my side, and it like made me aware that like maybe something's going on. I'm not sure yet what it is, but I just figured I'd get it out there and get it off my chest that that definitely is making me aware of something. I'm not sure what it is yet, but something's going on where like I didn't want him to give her the chair and stay with me instead. So I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you, Tiffany. Who else? We're introducing ourselves and something we've recently become aware of.
I'll go.
Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan. I've been learning a real lot about the principles of harm reduction and like what the true spirit of harm reduction is, which is new for me this year. And so there's like so many new awarenesses that I won't share them all with you because that's a whole different thing. I'll do a training later or something. I don't know. But one of the things that I was aware of, but I didn't really have like a name for it, and I hadn't talked about it in any concrete sense, is recovery stigma. And so for
Mhm.
people who use drugs, there's stigma towards people who identify as being in recovery, not necessarily undeserved, right? Because of the way that we treat people who use drugs. And we kind of have this line of like, if you're in recovery or trying, you're over here with us. And if you're like not ready or you don't want it bad enough, then you're like over here in this other category. And so when we other them into the other category, then, you know, that creates a lot of feelings that aren't positive towards those of us who do identify as being on the other side of that binary. And that's been a really, like I said, it's not new that people call us, you know, big book thumpers and holier than thou or whatever all those things might be. To really understand it on a human level, like on a dignity level, that we're not treating people who use drugs who aren't seeking recovery with dignity. And so therefore we get what we get back from that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's been a big awareness for me recently.
Wow, that is a whole training. Oh my gosh. Or at least a whole module, a couple hour module or something. Wow, that's great. Thank you, Megan. Who else? All right, in order to move this along, I'm gonna call on people. Michael.
Oh my gosh, I'll go.
Oh, okay.
So,
Laura.
yeah, I know how that works. All right, so I don't know what keeps coming up after you, what has kept coming up since you asked the question is like a 21st century spirituality I've become aware of, that I am inhabiting, embodying, discovering, standing in the middle of the unknowingness of that, but also become aware that there are so many other people that want something similar. And so I've been kind of throwing that idea around for a couple of weeks and asking some questions of folks. And I don't know, I think that I would really like to explore this further, maybe start an online group or something. But I think that people crave authenticity in their spiritual practices. And I haven't seen a lot of that in my lifetime. So I want to be able to inhabit that more fully and help other people imagine it and step into it.
I'd love to be part of that conversation because that kind of fits where I've been recently too. So if you start something, let me know. Anita.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anita. I think I've become more aware. I just started back recovery coaching, and it's emotional. So for me, it's very important. I've become more aware in the past couple of weeks, how important it is for me to keep my support, tight, and get the help that I need so I can best provide for others. So I've just been aware of that lately.
Thank you, Anita. Well said. Michael.
Yeah. So my daughter, right? She's I got two girls. One is in college, she'll be graduating next year at college, God willing. And I got a senior in high school as well. She's gonna be graduating again, God willing. She's been getting upset about going to school and using all types of excuses not to go to school. And it was bothering me, right? And I was getting upset at her, and I was like, you have to go to school. And I would never, like, I didn't take the time to ask her, like, why don't you want to go to school?
Right.
What's going on? Like, so last night we had a great conversation at the table, and she's telling me that friends that she had for the past 2 years, she's not getting along with, and that they're somewhat bullying her, right? And they're all ganging up on her. And this is one friend of hers that he's like got her back all the way. And she's like, listen, you just need to get away from them and just get some new friends. And it was funny because it was like the same thing I told her. And then she told me he told her that. So I was like, I said, you need to keep him as a friend, and I had to be more self-aware, and it made me even want to have a conversation with my other daughter to see how she's doing and how she's doing in those relationships, right? And it's just stuff that I need to be aware of because they're my girls, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be a dad.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to know when to be like the parent and to be the coach, right?
Yes.
So you pulled the coaching tools out.
Yeah.
Well done. Cool.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Joel, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Phil. I guess I've become aware of a kind of resilience within me that I never thought I had. I've been suffering for a couple of years now with chronic fatigue, and it's the long road of result of years of developmental trauma. A lot of my addiction issues come from a place of trauma. And lately, I've been uncovering a lot of stuff in my body that I never really knew was there. I mean, I always knew that the difficult stuff was there, but I never knew that there was this core strength that I've recently uncovered that was there. So as I'm going about my daily business, working through my difficulties, I'm also tapping into this core strength, this gumption, this kind of like this sort of steel part of me. So that's something that's a recent awareness.
Brilliant. Thank you. First row, everybody gone. Second row. Yeah, I can't see the whole name. Need my glasses. Fadian? Did I say that right? Fadalin. How do you say your name? Anyway.
Hi, my name is Fadilan.
Fadilan. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Got it.
Fadilan from Singapore.
Yeah. So
Again,
what have you recently become aware of?
again, I'm aware of my withdrawal. I'm going back to my cave. Again, I've been only about 3 months ago, I discovered that, my second son is having a problem with it, movement, and, he can hardly move. He needs support, and he also, diagnosed with leukemia. And, as I said, it's not that I tend to hide, run into my cave and just, beat myself up. I don't use anything, but the only thing is that I withdraw. When I say that I withdraw, I run back to the cave and just, talk to myself and say, look, how could I help this son of mine, And only just now when we went to the hospital and he needs to go for surgery for his limb. So I told him, I said, look, I will be there. I'll be, just stay strong because he needs to adjust his limb. He can hardly move. And again, for me to talk in a group, I've not talked to any group except in this group, and as I said, I have to make it more open so that, I can let it out from my chest and so on, and as I said, I have to be strong, and I need support, I need groups, and I need people to talk to. Basically, that's about it, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure many of us can identify with the withdrawal part. Retreat. Who else? Deborah. You're like just on the list as I go across in the Hollywood squares, so it's your turn.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Deborah. I work at Friends of Recovery of Otsego, Delaware, and now Shenango counties. Something that I have become aware of lately is my own self-limiting or self-destructive behaviors. And it's really interesting because it's almost like the more you become aware of them, the harder it is to kind of tackle them because now you don't have the excuse of not knowing anymore. So yeah, I guess it's just a work in progress. I guess we all know it's not really the destination, but it's the journey for the work that you do. So that's something that I'm aware of, and I'll just continuously try to work on.
Thank you. Ivana?
Morning. I work for Fordu. Oh geez, there's an echo. Sorry, I'm in the same office as Deborah. So something I've become aware of is how important it is to ground myself. Wait, can you mute that? I am muted. Oh, can you turn the volume off on your laptop? I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that. I've become aware of how important it is to ground myself and not hang on to people's energy after recovery coaching and just being able to decompress afterwards. Because people tend to unload their trauma or even cross boundaries sometimes. So as a part of my daily life, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that too, you know, being empathic in this field. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. Yvonne, did you want to introduce yourself? How about the mics? Anybody over there at the mics?
Hello, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Yvonne. Yes, what have I become aware of recently? Well, I identified with what Megan had to say earlier. But what I've become increasingly aware of in recovery coaching is hierarchies of recovery, similar to something that Megan was saying. My attention was drawn to it by an advertisement actually for a recovery coach. And one of the criteria was that you had to have 5 years in recovery, or you had to demonstrate 5 years in recovery. I can't really remember it actually. And it just struck me that that's something that could possibly rule a lot of people out of doing such great work. So it just made me think about it, really.
Thanks, Yvonne. You're trying to fire up all my buttons, aren't you? Push my buttons. Well, I did write a blog called A Crock of Clean Time Crap. So that might give you an opinion on an idea where I stand on that issue. Are any of the mics available?
There was a message.
Oh, okay.
On the
What
chat.
was the message? Sorry, me and reception. Oh, okay, can't share. That's pretty cool. Dana, did you want to say hi? And something you become recently aware of? No.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dana Nightingale. I'm from Fordu in Oneonta, New York.
And something you've recently become aware of?
I recently became aware of about what?
Whatever you choose, whatever you think of.
Can you come back to me?
I can.
Okay.
I think we're just about done anyway with I don't know. Fordo, are you there? Fordo Chenango. Did I say that? Did you want to introduce yourself? Say hi. Okay, you're still muted. Oh, he doesn't have a mic. Very good, then you're more than welcome to listen. So as we're talking about things that we've recently become aware of, and I want you to think about this. Define self-awareness. And please don't say it's becoming aware of oneself. No, define self-awareness. What are your thoughts on that? What's it mean to you? Mel.
To me, it's about really connecting with myself and becoming aware of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what sensations are going on in my body, and how that impacts how I'm doing at that moment in time. So really becoming present and having some knowledge about my physiology and everything else.
Great. Are you going to test me again? Fadilan.
Efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the efficacy, awareness, like, having my self-efficacy, how shall I act, what to act, and so on. So basically, for me, self-awareness is also got to do with self-efficacy.
Gotcha. Thank you. Laura.
So yeah, presence, openness, and receptivity in the current moment or set of continuous moments.
Thank you. Megan.
Yeah, I was just reading about this in a book about harm reduction. Gabor Mate's in the realm of hungry ghosts, and I love it. Towards the end, he's talking about approaches, and one of the things he talks about is the bare mind, which is a Buddhist principle, bare like BARE. And it really makes sense to me. It's sort of like detaching from all of like the emotional and things that are going on and just being able to objectively look at myself without having an attachment to what's going on. So I think that to me speaks to like a deep level of self-awareness, of being able to just almost separate from myself to sort of observe and understand why I do the things I do. What sort of elements is it my mind? Is it my emotions? Is it my past? What's in charge making decisions? So yeah, being able to look at myself in that way.
Thank you. Joel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only going to focus on one thing, which is discovering my ulterior motives, like seeing what's actually driving a particular behavior rather than what I think is driving a particular behavior.
Cool. I always thought self-awareness for me was like diving inside, to go like peeling layers of an onion, just diving into my essence of who I was, being willing to travel inwards. And then I've also, because I've done this a few times now, it's been pointed out that self-awareness is also being aware of how you are in the world, how other people perceive you. And like Jolie, and not that that's because a lot of times a lot of us spent like trying to be somebody we weren't so that the world would accept us. But Jolie has said, I am not aware of the influence I have on people. So in that sense, I think she's right, because I say things off the cuff and people get hurt and I didn't mean it that way, or things like that, because I'm just being stupid sometimes, actually. But so it's also me being a little more aware of how I am in the world. But to me, that's just me becoming more and more comfortable. I want to talk about two things, and then we're going to show you something. So in White Bison, Wellbriety, Don Coyes, they wrote this book, Red Road to Wellbriety. They often have the circle, and when they talk about a human being healing, they heal in four quadrants: physical, and we think about our own recovery. We heal physically, we heal mentally, and then some places will really dive into the spiritual component. White Bison talks about a fourth quadrant. Does anyone know what that fourth quadrant is? Emotional. It's emotional. And so I coupled that with some things I discovered over the summer, is reading Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, where she talks about emotion and emotional intelligence or emotional awareness. it's such a new field that people, even the top scientists and researchers in the world, can't agree on a definition of what emotion is. I think Ivana was talking about being empathic, taking on the emotion of other people. So there's like an energy exchange in emotions, right? Now, most people, and me included, and if you heard me talk about this, early in recovery, I could only identify 3. What are the 3? 3 emotions. For most people, the vast majority can only identify 3. Sad,
Fear.
angry, and happy. Happy, mad, sad. Those are the 3. And nobody's answered my question yet if horny is an emotion. I'm not sure. So we'd have to go and play around with that one a little bit. I'm not quite sure. So it's happy, mad, sad. So I also tell the story that when I was in Smokey the cab driver's office, he had an emoji chart, and this is in like 1987 or 88. And it had all these other ones like guilty, embarrassed, ashamed, excited, joyful, all these ones. And I was like staring at it with my mouth open. And then he was one to stir the pot and the juice. So he goes, "Hey, Phil, did you know you can feel more than one at the same time?" And I went, "No, don't tell me that. That's impossible." So as we're talking about this in the Advanced Academy, Stacy Charpentier found this feeling wheel that Michael's going to put up for us as he shares his screen. I think Michael's going to do it. Anybody ever seen a feeling wheel? And so you might be able to blow this up and slide over a little bit. So this is hard to read. Michael, is there a way for you to, is that a PDF? Could you just blow it up so we can actually read that? I don't know, on your screen somehow.
Actually, it's not a PDF, but I got I had another one. This is the one that Stacy sent me.
Yeah,
But let me stop sharing and I'll get that one.
So what this is going to show you, is anybody ever seen a feeling wheel? Just raise your hands, right? So look at Nathan's got one. And this helps you kind of target what you are feeling. English is not a good word, is not a good language for emotional, for emotions. We have very few words to describe emotions compared to a lot of other languages, which in and of itself I find fascinating.
Can you see this one?
Yeah, it's a little better. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So you can see we do have the angry, we have the happy and the sad. When they also talk about bad in the green, it's like bored, busy, tired, stressed, surprised, and disgusted. So a lot of times, I want you right now to take this feeling wheel and pinpoint one of the feelings. So if you're feeling pretty happy right now, are you feeling playful, content, interested? So maybe you're interested, but maybe you go to the outside circle and say, I'm hopeful, I'm sensitive, feeling valued, respected. So then you can start to identify some of the feelings that you are what are you feeling today? Did any of these resonate for any of you? And would you like to share what that might be? Nathan.
So this is really interesting because I stuck this on my board one day after something I did with one of the C-car gang. And I just thought, I just want to be aware of it. And I felt fear. And I was talking to somebody about it and they said, Nita, that's not a bad fear. And so I really struggled because when I was thinking, I'm feeling fear, and I was looking at and it was scared, anxious, insecure, weak, rejected. And I was like, but these are all, I'm feeling fear of something positive. so it doesn't necessarily fit in there. And that was when somebody, I don't think I've mentioned it to Michael once, told me about fear in the Hebrew language doesn't have one word, it has two words. And one word for fear is about fight or flight or security. And the other was about fear of stepping into a sacred place that is your calling.
Ooh.
And I just thought, man, because often I felt fear about something, but I wasn't life fight or flight fear. It was just fear of stepping into a greater space. And that didn't make me kind of fit with all the fear labels. So I sort of wrote my own on the side, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll share this article in the chat with y'all because it was just such a change in perspective about I am not going to lose the roof over my family. You know, I'm not going to lose, nobody's losing their life. This is just stepping into a greater space. And there's a bit of fear around it.
Mm-hmm. Khalees, you had your hand up?
Well, hers was really exciting. I was just going to say that I've woken up today and I have a sore throat, so I feel a little off and withdrawn. But like mom came in with like fear, you know, confidence, happy. And I'm like, I'm withdrawn. So there's my word, Phil, since you called on me still.
That's all right. Anybody else? What do you think of this feeling wheel? What are you feeling and any thoughts about it? I don't know what that one is, Michael, but we're seeing like a mountain ridge rainbow or something.
I think the feeling wheel can be obviously, you know, a very useful tool with recoveries, as well as myself. You know, if I'm in a session and, you know, as they say, I'm feeling some type of way that's interfering with the free flow between me and the recovery, then it can be very useful for myself to check in with why am I encountering obstacles, because generally the obstacles aren't theirs, they're mine. And so, you know, I need to, like, it's my job to keep the relationship in such a way that it's productive. And so if the obstacles are mine, and so the feeling wheel, I think, helps me identify, like, why am I not want to, why am I dreading this meeting, or why can't I seem to get anywhere, or whatever.
Great point. Thank you, Megan. Laura.
Yeah, I like this wheel. I find it very helpful to myself, just like what Megan was saying, to identify some different facet of an emotion, or maybe I can't quite put my finger on what the heck it is that's going on here. So it's helpful. But I've also used it with recoveries, and we do art around the colors that are represented here.
Yeah, right.
And so that's very helpful as well. And I still base a lot of my art on that. If you look at my art, there's a lot of blue. So whatever is in that blue category, yeah. I think we go in phases too. And this is really helpful to kind of see the depths in the different phases that we go through.
Mel.
Yeah, I use this, and I go perhaps a step further, and I help people identify their perceptions, because often people say, oh, I feel lonely, but actually that's not a feeling. And so using a tool like this, you're able to say, okay, so where does lonely sit? Okay, maybe lonely means I feel numb or I feel depressed. And so it helps people, particularly in recovery, who in my experience, have been alienated from their feelings for a long time, to kind of reconnect with the specific way that they are feeling, and also to differentiate between a perception and a feeling.
Thank you. Michael.
You were saying that you had that conversation with Spokey, and he said you can have more than one. And I noticed that people were just saying one. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I want to pick the surprise and excited but at the same time, it's not surprised and excited in a fearful way. It's surprised and excited in a happy way. So I just like, and it was okay because I was just gonna pick surprise, but I'm like, why do I have to just pick surprise? Like, why can't I go and say I'm surprised but happy at the same time? So I just noticed that everybody's picking one, just like one feeling. But you said it was okay, like you had that conversation, like you can have those different feelings at once. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Michael. Joel.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the wheel doesn't do is it doesn't describe the dynamics of feelings. It's, you know, these are very static verbal labels. So in music, for example, it's like you go from you got to do a crescendo or a decrescendo or an intensification. So like, you know, when you're sexually excited, for example, there are levels at which the arousal sits in your body and then either magnifies and amplifies or comes down again. And a lot of those feelings are just missed completely when you look at a static verbal label like this.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing that Brene Brown says in Atlas of the Heart is many people are driven by emotions. And I relate to that as when I was addicted early in recovery, my whole first 28 years of life, I was driven by emotions. And in order to gain control over your emotion, Brene Brown says the simple act of identifying it and labeling it gives you power over it. And so I remember when I was early in recovery in the United States, there was a guy named Father Martin who was used to give these things called chalk talks, and they would actually write on a chalkboard. And one of the key points was he'd write I and then slash over E, intelligence over emotions. And because that was a journey towards recovery, that was emotional intelligence, if you will, that just because, how many of these do you feel in a day? I mean, how many can you feel in an hour? So they're very fleeting, they're dynamic, like Joel said. If you identify it, does that mean you have to respond to them or react to them? You know, in training the Recovery Coach Academy, sometimes we say, just let that grenade roll by. So if I'm going to pick up that emotion and hold on to it, that could be my own personal grenade, right? And blow up my day. Sometimes I choose to do that. Sometimes I don't. Any other thoughts about this? So you guys talked a little bit about this. Talk about how this more in depth from the two aspects you talked about. How could this be helpful in recovery coaching? Not only for you as a recovery coach, but for those that you are coaching the recoveries. Do you see this as helpful, beneficial, useful? I wouldn't use it. It terrifies me. I think it's wonderful. Any of those? Please.
I think it's great. I mean, especially I can say from my personal experience, whenever I got into recovery, I didn't know how to explain the way I felt. I didn't know how to talk about it, or even feel confident opening up, you know, to talk about the way I felt. And sometimes, you know, from my experience, it was that angry, mad, or, you know, fear, sad, happy. I think this is it. And then that very much confusion of, am I really happy? And I like to question myself and really think, like, is this really, am I really happy, or is this fake? Or like, I think I'm sad, but am I sad? And like, so having this gives me something to kind of not only guide me, but then I think it could be a really good tool for other people who might be in a similar situation as me or where I was.
I think I did this I think it was in Bridgeport, And I know this one person was very contemplative. And so I just asked him, I said, you seem like you're thinking about this. He had never seen anything like this before. And he said, I have known nothing but red my entire life. He had known all those feelings in the red pie, anger. That's what he grew up in. That's what the streets were to him. That's what his current situation was. That's what prison was. He said, I have never known anything but red. And I just said, wow, that's quite an awareness. I don't know. I mean, what do you do with that? But, so Michael.
I like that you pointed that out, right? And I'm glad that you brought that, because I grew up with a lot of people that thought the same way, right? And I believe it was their values, right? That they just didn't care, And when you ask like how can this relate to like coaching? If you don't care about someone that you're working with, right? Like your values get in the way, and just say, like, let's just say, for instance, if you're the type of person that walks in a room and you value people's attention, or you value people's names, like just saying hi to somebody, right, and asking somebody the name. If you don't value that, you can just walk in a room and just sit there and then look around. Either wait for somebody to acknowledge you, or you don't care if anybody to acknowledge you. So I believe it has to do with values, and I bet he grew up with those values.
Yeah. So when I first saw this was when I facilitated the Advanced Academy for Recovery Coaches, and we found this. And I might have seen versions, but this was the first time it really resonated with me. So much so that we made big posters and put them in each of the centers. There's one right down the hall too. Laura.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe for a lot of us, but I'm only going to speak for myself, trying to stuff my emotions was a major contributing factor to my active addiction. And, I was taught that, you can't keep your emotions on the surface all the time. You shouldn't let people know what you're feeling all the time. And, through recovery, I have learned that every emotion that rolls through my body is okay. It's okay. There are no bad or negative emotions, really. At least that's how I look at it. They're useful. So yeah, they can be those indicators, but they don't have to be those dictators, right? And I believe that, I identify as a sensitive person, and maybe even a highly sensitive person, and I don't wear that on my sleeve either. But it's like there's so much that I believe can be addressed using something like this, or at least addressing emotions with a recovery, because I think there's a lot of people not in recovery yet because they are highly sensitive, and that's not being addressed. It's not being identified. And because there are these different complex emotions that we may go through in any given moment or hour or whatever, there needs to be some kind of training. And I try to teach my students about emotions. We talk about that in communication class. But yeah, I think it's a really important element of learning how to have conversations with people and to be aware that there are all these different emotions being exchanged. Like you said earlier, it is that exchange of energy. And I think that's what spirituality is too, it's energy. So they're all kind of tied up there. And it is the wise mind, or the wise entity, a being, who is able to combine, fairly equally the reasonable mind and the emotional mind.
Yeah, emotional intelligence. That's well said. Again, that goes to that quadrant that when we talk about recovery and coaching, that we often speak about how you're taking care of your body, the damage we've done to that. So let's take care of the body. Then we talk about the mind a lot. How are we thinking? And all of that. Then almost like, to me, this is how I view it, the next level is we get into the spiritual component, but very rarely have we ever addressed the emotional component. And Laura, I think you hit it spot on when we said we were trained as kids or taught as kids, you don't talk about emotions. You were always very well reserved. And I go, why? Yeah, Megan.
Yeah, this is really making me think about another thing I'm learning with the harm reduction stuff is that we are so focused on the bottom tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're so physiological and safety, right? And because those are huge needs in early recovery or working with people who use drugs. And we don't spend much time in the top levels of that hierarchy, which is, self-actualization, esteem, and love and belonging. And we do with the love and belonging, and we do, the spirituality but, really, sometimes I think we believe that, well, they have to have housing before they can do the other work. And I don't think that's true. I think that we need to be working at all levels of the tier, all levels of the hierarchy, to be most effective. And so this fits in really well with that. And let's let the case managers and recovery navigators and everything focus the most on housing and food stamps and whatever else those things are. Because I think as coaching, we get to engage in some of that other stuff. And I think we're at our best when we engage in all of it, and less so with just those basic needs. We definitely have to help with resources, referrals, and all that stuff to get, to help people with the physiological, but why do we spend so much energy down there and less energy on the emotional, spiritual, esteem and all of that in the ways that we are able to within our lane?
Yeah. Yeah. Joel. You're muted. Joel, you're muted. Start over.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Now you were saying that we don't delve into the emotional side of life as kids, but there are large groups of people who do just that through the arts, right? I mean, it's one of those issues, policy issues, where the arts are underfunded in schools, they're undervalued. But if you talk to somebody who's a dancer, who's a singer, who might be a rapper, who might be a poet, this is exactly what they're doing when they're learning as kids and as adults to regulate their emotions and to discover the energy and the aliveness in their bodies, right? It's a major resource for recovery, but it's not for everybody. But it's something that is already existing out there. But maybe the majority could just pay more attention to it.
Well said. Thank you. Great point, Mel.
Yeah, I just wanted to continue on from what Joe was saying. My particular pathway is mindfulness-based addiction recovery, and that is all about helping people be with their emotions, accept them, be with the uncomfortable, and really broaden their awareness. So yeah, it's very pertinent. And there's a lot of people that come and learn that technique from me that really have trouble connecting to their feelings. And even not so much perhaps when they're first in recovery, but actually further down the track as well. Yeah.
So let me ask you, when you say connecting to their feelings, or what do you mean by connecting?
Well, first of all, it's the awareness piece that you were talking about. So really understanding what the emotion is, the feeling is, then where does it show up in the body, and then allowing space for the bodily sensation in order to bring some acceptance. And often the somatic wisdom will then arise into a thought, yes, this is what's going on. So rather than thinking with the brain, thinking with the third brain, which is the belly. Yeah. Does that make sense?
You lost until you got to the belly part. I was right up to you until we got to the third brain in the belly.
Okay, so we have three brains. Brain here, brain in the heart, and the belly, three nervous systems. And when they're all interconnected, then they're all aligned. And if one part is out of sync, then we are disconnected, and that's for a lot of us the work to become whole and to, this is trauma healing work really I'm talking about now. But yeah.
That's cool. I was thinking about the questions, right, that we often get asked, or we ask, how are you feeling, right? And what kind of answers do you get? And what is, and what's the difference when you frame it this way? What are you feeling? So we've even taken that, because a lot of people were in the advanced academy, and even here in the offices, we will carry our wheels around and say, what are you feeling? And what that has done is it's taken the judgment out of the feeling. Because I think, Laura, you were talking a little bit about, we tend to label feelings as either negative or positive, when they're just feelings. They're just the way our energy, or our vibrational energy, or whatever you want to say, is interacting with whatever's going on around us, and how that's translated into us. And we know so little about that it's just like a brand new frontier. So, Neetha, you were talking about being fearful, and almost like that was negative. Is it negative? Is it positive? Or is it just is? And so I like that we are now starting to open up to each other and say, well, if I look around this, I'm feeling this, and this, and said, really? Wow, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Or what is it you want to do with that? And like I said, I read this while I was on Cape Cod about the labeling, and this was new for me, so we're always teaching best what you most need to learn, and becoming more self-aware, that I had gotten pretty good at identifying what was going on with me, and usually can go to the source of where that was. But then something like Buddy the dog comes up, and you're getting angry to the point of furious because the dog wants to go for a walk with you. That doesn't align with everything I've been what's going on with me. So how do I become more self-aware of what is really happening? So when I started to label that, and then not just be furious because that was convenient, because I wanted to avoid what was really happening, the fear of loving too deeply and getting hurt again, fear of sadness, fear of grief, fear of loss, that once it lost its power, and I was able to come to a resolution. Thoughts? Tiffany, what are you thinking about all this stuff?
I'm thinking about how, when you said the first question, how the answer I always get is good. How are you doing? I'm good. That's what I usually get. So maybe if I say, what are you feeling, that could really help me to dig a little bit with my recovery.
Great. Joel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this might sound a bit highfalutin, but there's, in the tantric sort of practices, there's this quite common idea that behind every emotion there's just energy, and it's neither good nor bad. But there are actually practices that, embodied practices, where you can get simply in touch with that energy when you remove the story that's going through your head, and you just get in touch with the bodily energy. It's neither good nor bad. It's just a very powerful source that you can wield.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. Brene Brown also talks about the story we tell ourselves, which is what you were just indicating. This is this emotion, and this is a story I'm telling myself about it, instead of just sitting with it. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, again, I don't know, I'm on this whole thing with binaries lately, but that good, bad, and we are so often black and white in early recovery, and some people forever. Hopefully we grow to be a little more complex in how we see things, but I love that this helps sort of, give a spectrum or, a complexity and helping people see that, using this as a way of talking about black and white thinking and black and white feelings and labeling things as good or bad to kind of help people step into a little bit of the gray arena, which is the reality of where we live, right? With lots of unknowns and not being able to label things. So that's what it made me think of.
Yeah, we are exploring non-duality. Love that. Anybody have any thoughts or questions for the group? Any questions for the group? What are you thinking? Tiffany.
I just wanted to reiterate the feeling like two emotions and how it could be a good feeling and a bad feeling. Like I'm flying today to go visit my brother and I'm excited, but I'm also fearful. And then you could break down the fearful into two too, right? Like the fear is like, it's a good fear because it's unknown and I haven't done it before, but it's also a bad fear. Why would it be a bad fear? I'm not sure why it would be a bad fear, but I'm just saying you can be like two different, I just really like that. I've never that like hit home with me today that like, I'm feeling two different emotions and that's okay.
You've never flown before?
It's been a long time since I haven't flown since I've been clean. So it's going to be interesting. And I haven't seen my brother since I've been clean either. So it's going to be a big trip.
Where are you flying to?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I've never been there, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll come back with some cowboy boots, cowgirl boots.
We'll see. Any other thoughts?
There might be a time when it's not good to pull out your feeling wheel with a recovery.
Exactly.
I've been thinking about that as we've been talking. I'm like, wow, there's definitely moments where I wouldn't be like, would you like to look at a feeling wheel right now?
Right.
When empathy is really just what I need to do.
Your art.
Maybe do the feeling wheel later.
Your art of recovery coaching, when to use it and when not to use it. I fully trust you would have that. Not the same approach for all situations. Neetha, you've been relatively quiet. I like it when you're quiet because that means you're thinking about something.
Oh, Phil. Yeah. I don't know, man, my little pen's been going on the side here. And I just kind of went, if I actually am really self-aware and get in touch with my feelings, the word that came to mind was, it just requires a really deep level of intimacy and honesty with myself.
Yeah.
To kind of, and then figuring out how to step away from that emotive response to then go, actually, what are the facts? Could there be a different emotive response? Is there a different feeling to describe what's going on? And then when you said, somebody had said they always sit in the red, and I was like, ooh, because I was like, what if you always sat in the gray? What if you always sat in the blue? And just my head went off on a whole other kind of, which area would I want myself to sit in if I could pick a color to sit in? And so, yeah, I think for me, this is all about making sure I have the space to really think about things and breathe before responding.
Well said. Do you have a pet emotion?
Pet emotion.
A pet. And so a pet is like your favorite, or your pet is the one that you feed. So like there's some people, and I mean, social media is like a great example. They feed their anger. They're just bitter people. That's what they sit in, or they're incredibly fearful and they live there, or they're whatever. So I asked myself that question: is there one that I like to feed, and it shifts and it changes, given the situations, so here I am, like on this weekend, I was like, it was about 60 degrees. I'm in shorts, a long sleeve shirt and a t-shirt. And in the waves, I've caught like 25 bass. They're blowing up all over the place. I've worn myself out. I'm content. I'm happy. I'm excited. And then these boats come in and cross my line. And they yanked on my line and broke my lure off. And I started to go right into this like red zone. I find that the red is, because that's kind of like my face turns red, I get heated, it's like the appropriate color. And I said, you know what? Why did I just jump? So, whether it was right or wrong, whether what the guy did in the boat or whatever, I said, I had a incredible day. I said, Sandy was waiting in the car, Buddy was worn out. I said, I'll just reel in this slack line, put my fishing rod in the truck, and drive to the campsite. So it was me having some control over that, instead of like tying on a heavier lure and whipping it at the boat or something like that, or giving them F-bombs and giving the finger from the shore like a lot of other fishermen were doing. I chose a different route. And so I think that's kind of what models what we can do as coaches too, to say, you reacted this way. What might have been another way you could have reacted? What prevented you from doing that? Or what could you do that? Because I see people that I talk to and coach being so driven by emotions. Usually when they're hot, they don't always have good outcomes either. At least that's true for me. Megan.
Yeah, I know I'm offering a lot of thoughts, but this one's a burning one. I'm just like, what? This is so making sense to me. But when I was looking at the wheel again just now and thinking, like, disgusted, why is it on the wheel? It's on the wheel because it's a necessity for humans to identify things that they should be repelled from, right? In order to be safe, or in order to not eat something poisonous or whatever. And so it made me really reflect that all of these are just functions of us operating in a way that we can meet our own needs. And so that with recoveries is huge. Like if we can sort of have conversations where they're identifying feelings, and we can connect that to, well, what's the need that is underneath that, and how can you meet that need? That's like such a tool for self-efficacy, of understanding I'm feeling this because I can't get what I need or want. And so that isn't serving me. This emotional kind of thing it's okay. It's a feeling. It's not wrong. But what can I now actually do now that I've identified the need underneath that feeling?
Thank you. Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of bouncing off just what Megan was saying, or echoing it maybe, because I mean, for some people, I believe that in my experience, their emotion is a response, to a perception or to something actually in reality. Matters not sometimes. And oftentimes that is also, it's like almost a narcissistic way of identifying with the world. It's like, okay, well, the whole world revolves around me, just like in your example of the fishing line. Well, you're throwing your damn fishing line out there. There are boats in the water. It's inevitable that's going to happen sooner or later, right? But, I get incensed sometimes at similar happenings. But I think if one can learn to understand what these emotions are better, and maybe even the why behind why they're feeling it, then perhaps they won't have that same response. I think we eventually recondition ourselves, retrain ourselves to have different responses so that it's healthier for us as individuals. And that goes to that whole nervous system connection too. Because I've found that my nervous system can be a wreck by the end of a workday, for example, because I'm around so many people or there's been so many emotions or whatever. And I need to make sure that I can self-regulate. So I think that's a big outcome of this for recoveries too, is that as coaches, we're helping them to learn how to self-regulate.
Yeah, it's got me thinking about a lot of things with all that too, is, there's like when I'm in vacation mode and I'm a much better place emotionally than, I like what you said about by the end of a work day, the taxing it takes on my nervous system. I hadn't really thought about that, what that means to me emotionally, and why fatigue sets in. And because my body's fit, it's been great, but I'm fatigued because of all the different emotions and responses and people and decisions and stress and all that. So yeah, you sent me down a place where I got to think about more, Laura. Thank you. I think. I think. Khalees, you're not going to get away. You're in that mode. You had your hand up, down, up, down. Now
I know. I've been trying to formulate what's going on in here without like just running my mouth for 10 minutes. I guess like lately I've really been thinking about, so something that helped my recovery was I always said, like, I'm not super religious or anything, but God only gives me what I can handle. And like, if we're having that self-awareness within ourselves, we gain clarity on our inspirations, our attributes. And I believe that what we put out, we attract. So if I'm putting out compassion, if I'm putting out love, if I'm putting out those things, naturally people gravitate towards that. But I've also had to do a lot of work on myself to even acknowledge that. And now, I do have that self-awareness where I was actually just saying this to Megan the other day, whenever somebody is nagging at me, let's say that word nagging, it's driving me nuts. It's normally because I can see something in them that I used to do, or that is something in me, that my old behaviors, whatever it may be, which then I can turn that into compassion for that individual and say, maybe they've never been heard. Maybe they've never been supported, whatever that may be. But recently I've been really questioning on, like, if we're saying we're living our authentic selves and we're putting that out there, then like, wouldn't that come back to us? My mom this past year, she has said, please practice servant leadership. So now, going to a meeting and saying, how can I help you? And I have found whenever I give and love more and put that out there, rather than asking what I need, what is my motive? How are you going to serve me? I reap more fruit. The fruit is more beneficial and bigger and greater outcomes and things like that. But it took a lot of deep inner work to realize that. And it took a lot of practice, if I'm being honest, practice to say, actually, no, I'm not going into this and saying, how can you help me? What can I get out of that? So I guess, okay, I'm going to stop because I feel like I'm rambling on. But my question is, I always say I have a vibe. I can feel it when people are real. Some people can say, I'm being real right now. I really feel this way. I'm really living into this. But I feel on the opposite end that this is not real. How can we best support somebody in this phase as a recovery coach?
Find the right question.
I should have known you were going to say that.
No, it would be to me. I just hope the right question comes up for me. I think Megan said challenge them too. If that's what your art is saying to do, sometimes you just let it roll by too. You never know.
I'm not the type of person to challenge somebody the way that they're saying they're feeling just because my vibe is different. If somebody came up to me and said, oh, you're really saying you feel this way, like, let me have my feelings, bro. Okay. Even if they're not real, maybe I'm still discovering them, but I don't know.
Well, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question. So how does that make you feel when people are like that? That would be my question to you, Khalees. Why does that bother you so much that they're not, they say they're being real when they're not?
Because I can feel it. I can feel it. And then to be repeatedly like told and lied to. And I'm like, I'm
So-
not, I can sense this.
So then why wouldn't you have that response?
There you go.
That's real and genuine. I can sense this. So I think for me, and we'll just wrap it up a little bit here, is I've always, Bill Wilson in Alcoholics Anonymous, he talked about recovery is a journey towards humility. I would reframe that recovery for me is a journey to self-awareness. And I don't think that you ever reach that end point. I just been doing it for 30 plus years and still discovering things about myself, discovering more and more, becoming more and more self-aware. I asked that question about what's your pet emotion? And I don't know if it's my pet emotion, but my default motion that I've worked on for years, first of all, was I was afraid of everything, was fear. And then I would just resort to anger because I thought anger was a little more powerful than fear. And because I said it earlier, anger is the face of fear for me. So if I get angry, I'm afraid. Early on in my recovery, when Sandy and I would have these conversations, she wanted to know, like, when the kids got hurt, I got angry. I got angry because I was afraid, but it took me a long time to figure that out. So, this is always, I don't know why my default is anger. I could go back and look, but that's the thing I'm working on. I do also think when you look at the wheel, recovery and the process of recovery has provided a lot of the yellow and purple components. I don't know what that means as far as color wise, but I would say the majority of my time is spent with those, and I'm grateful for that. So, and I think that's always working on being grateful. Let me see what else, if there was any other key things I had in here in all my notes. So, and I guess just to summarize, an increased self-awareness to me is the ability to identify the emotions that are going on inside of me. And that's why the feeling wheel has helped me. Emojis on my phone have helped me, although I can't always tell what those stupid little things mean anyway. So I need a word to go with it. Identifying helps give me the power over them, because once I label them, I can use my mind to say, okay, I'm feeling this. It's fleeting. It's not long. I can't even stay mad for long periods of time anymore. Can't stay happy or whatever. They're just also fleeting. They move, they shift. So you become comfortable with the shifting of the emotions. So in the few minutes we have left, does anybody have any thoughts they would like to share or summarize about this session? Any takeaways, learnings, comments? Please. Joel.
Yeah, Phil, thanks. I was just going to say that when it comes to like having pet emotions, I think that's part of the problem, is that we favor one over the other. But I think the other stuff just ends up in the shadows, and we're not whole if we're not accepting of everything that's part of being human.
Well said. Thank you. David.
I'm just looking at the wheel and just thinking of, like, just the profound difference between, looking at the wheel and identifying my feelings now in recovery, as opposed to, talk to me 5 years ago and doing the same, same thing. It's, it's interesting to say the least, that was an interesting thing. I know I've looked at the wheel in recovery and, just to kind of put myself back years ago and do it. And it's, I mean, we're so, the emotions are real now. They weren't real in a way. But anyway, it was an interesting way to look at it. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Adilan.
By looking at the wheel, it is a challenge for me. As I said, I'm serving a non-English speaking population, and obviously, it's another challenge to make them understand, realize, and even articulate. But as I said, it's also nice, to have a group of people in my local community helping me to translate into the native language, so that people in recovery can also understand and start using these feeling wheels ahead for their own recovery.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, well, once again, I've thoroughly enjoyed this session. I teach best what I most need to learn. As you can obviously tell, I have a long way to go, which is okay. Maybe by the time I'm 73, I might know a little bit more. I hope another 10 years or so. So have a sparkling day, everybody. Thank you for your time. I appreciate each and every one of you. And hope to see you next month, same time, same place, same channel. Who knows? We'll see what comes up then.